Morning Talk with Siki Mgabadeli.
On SAFM 104 to 107, talking about the state of our society this morning. An interesting report in the Star this morning where they're quoting the Bureau for Market Research, which found that nearly 80% of a group of Gauteng high school pupils that they surveyed actually regularly consume alcohol. Of the 4,346 pupils in grades 8 to 12 who were quizzed, 66.6% said they had been drunk, 44.8% had done binge drinking, and 79.4% regularly consumed alcohol. That's the state of our society. Let's talk about that, and we're going to talk about what we're seeing. We're seeing gang rapes, we're seeing drug abuse, crime, we're seeing disdainful actions from our institutions such as the police, and we're seeing absent parents as well. So what has happened? We're going to take your calls on 0891104207, SMSs to 34701, in conversation with Dr. Tebogo Maitse, who is acting chairperson of the Commission for Gender Equality, and Dr. Smangaliso Khumalo, who's Director for Research and Postgraduate Studies at the School of Religion, Philosophy and Classics. Thank you so much to both of you for your time this morning.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here.
Morning, Sigi. Thank you very much.
It's an absolute pleasure. Dr. Maitse, let me start with you. I mean, I've rattled off statistics, but there's a face of this that we're seeing. We saw the face of it with that video that went viral last week. Where do you believe things have gone wrong?
It is really difficult to pinpoint where things have gone wrong. I think that there is something that says young people, particularly young boys, have a right to violate young people, young girls. And unfortunately, many of us are not talking to it. We are talking across each other. We are not talking directly, and we are not naming. You see, failure to define and name something perpetuates that culture. And I think that I hear you talking about absent parenting and whatever. I think in most instances, parents are there. But what role do they play? That is a question that we need to ask. Because sometimes parents parent their children through money. And I think that also we tend to say that people do certain things because they're poor. And that is wrong. That's saying that being poor turns you into something that is wrong. It is completely wrong. It's conjectural. We are actually assigning people's actions to something that they live with. And we need to know and ask ourselves, why is it that certain individuals then who live in so-called poverty react in that manner, whereas others do not? You know, and we know that as Africans, many of us were brought up by our mothers, fathers were absent. They were either migrant laborers, or those that were migrant laborers had families elsewhere. So they fathered children in urban areas and left and went back home. So the majority of particularly people my age were brought up by single mothers. And we did not turn out the way we did, the way our children
are turning on today. Yeah. So you said that if we continue to talk across this and not speak to what is at the heart of it, we are going to continue to perpetuate it. So we need to name it. So if we named it, what is the problem?
Question is, name it. Why the phenomena? Okay. Why can't we take these children and ask them, why are you doing this? Because we all surmise. None of us know exactly why they turn out the way they are doing. Because right now we are all outraged because it's a mentally disabled girl whose rights had been violated, whose sexuality actually had been violated. it happens. This phenomena happens every day. And none of us ever sit down and say, exactly explain why are you doing it. And I always ask myself the question, what happens when these young boys are queuing to rape somebody else? Do they actually get aroused by watching somebody else doing it? Or it's difficult, but I would like us, in order to name it, I'd like us to sit down with them and ask them why they're doing it. And I think it would be more appropriate if men asked them
that question.
Because we women have fought and we have fought and we have fought. It's about time men said, these young boys do not represent us.
All right. I'm going to bring in Father Smangaliso Mkhatshwa, who's chairperson of the Moral Regeneration Movement, into this conversation. He's with us just for a few short minutes to give us his perspective. Father Mkhatshwa, thank you very much for your time this morning. You've heard the start of our conversation with Dr. Maidza. What do you make of our society today as the Moral Regeneration Movement?
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity. I think by and large I agree with the remarks made by Dr. Maidza. It seems to me that we've got to accept the fact that this kind of very abnormal behavior, which almost very complex. Complex in the sense that some factors are also the whole question of the way we are socialized as young boys, and the environment, the role that environment plays in the upbringing of children, the abuse of social media, and then the disintegration of family values, lack of discipline, whether at home, whether in our institutions. So those are that I think contribute by and large to what we're witnessing now. But there's also the question of a patriarch. Some of these young men, I would imagine that probably they haven't got much schooling, they haven't got much education. When they see this young woman, they probably are saying in their own minds, well, you may be, I'm speaking now in general, you may be better educated than me, but I remain a man all the same. I'm strong, I'm tough, I will show you, that kind of mindset. Although in this particular instance, of course, this does not exactly apply because apparently the victim was to some extent disabled in one form or the other. But I'm just making a general remark that the patriarchal culture, some of its traits, manifest themselves in the way in which some of these young people behave. And maybe one of the problems that is a challenge that's facing us, I think, as a country as a whole, is that we may actually be trying to deal with an extraordinary situation by using normal and ordinary means. In life, it does not work like that. If you're dealing with a normal situation, you also use extraordinary measures to deal with it, at least for a time. So, opening remarks, and just to say that we in the Moral Regeneration Movement, we have 9 values. And out of the 9 values, the very first one actually addresses itself to the debate we're having right now. It's called respect for human dignity and equality. I'll just read quickly just one or two points mentioned here. It says, we commit ourselves, it's a commitment, this is a value. We commit ourselves to respect the worth of all individuals, irrespective of social origin, race, gender, age, status, and class, to fight against physical and emotional harassment of results in rape and other forms of abuse, to eradicate the abuse of children, social ills such as malnutrition, child labor, drug trafficking, pornography, and prostitution, etc., etc. So that's our approach. We are saying, let's find a holistic way of addressing the way in which human beings behave towards one another, their interaction, because it seems to me that's really the crux of the matter. We can behave in such a way that we actually destroy, damage one another, or we can behave in a way that we actually help people to be empowered, to be more developed. So those are my opening remarks.
How do we turn that into a lived reality, Father Mkhatshwa? Because it's one thing to say this is what we aspire to, this is what we sign up for, but that's not what we're seeing in our communities.
That is correct, unfortunately. Hence, therefore, the need, I think, for the community to fight this scourge in different ways, but in a coordinated fashion. By individuals who won't really get us very far. That's why I think the More Regeneration movement was actually started in order to try and, as much as possible, to coordinate all those activities that are meant to enhance nation building, to enhance relationship between individuals, whether people of the same gender or different gender and so forth. So that's practically what we have to be doing. And in my opinion, I'm not aware, for instance, of a special institution that actually focuses specifically on this kind of conduct. I'm not talking about just sending kids to Stowe School. That's too general, it's too vague and so on. Because this is a specific area of our concern. Violence that takes various forms. And it seems to me, therefore, that if there was an institution just to focus on this aspect, that'd be one contribution. The other contribution is education. By education in our schools, not just any kind of education, good quality education that empowers. Not like the situation that sometimes we find in some of our schools where the schools are terribly underperforming and so on. Because once there's too wide a gap between products of poor performing schools as opposed to those that are well organized, that are really empowering their kids, you have a situation where there are tensions, where you can actually have a disaster.
All right. I know we need to let you go. I wish we had more time with you, but thanks for your comments this morning, Father Smangaliso Mkhatshwa, chairperson of the Moral Regeneration Movement. Let's bring in Dr. Smangaliso Khumalo now, who's a director for research and postgraduate studies at the School of Religion, Philosophy and Classics. And thanks for your time, Dr. Khumalo. What do you make of what's been said so far?
Thank you, Tsigi. I agree with what both Dr. Maite and Father Mkhatshwa have already shared as the cause of this problem and then scourge that we are facing as a nation. I would just want to add that actually all this tells us that we are an angry nation. We are very, very angry. And in South Africa, the violence that we have, violence is everywhere. It's happening in other countries, both in the continent and also outside the continent. But what makes ours to stand out is that our violence is so brutal. Even if people were robbing a person, they would even kill a person for a cell phone. This kind of rape and all that, where 7 people rapes one person, where you then see women themselves, as we've seen. In fact, that in Soweto, there were these 2 ladies who raped a young man. Yeah. So it's not only an issue of men raping women. It just looks like we are just messed up as a society. This is beginning to happen from both sides, although the male violation of women seems to be more prominent and it's happening more than the other. So I think we are an angry people. We have not dealt with the causes of anger in our people. So over and above the issue, the cultural issues, the economic issues that are out there, the political issues, the environment that we live in is a poisoned environment. We are not able to raise our people, our children and our boys properly so as to respect.
Now, Father Mkhatshwa raised the issue of a need for an institution that deals specifically with this state of mind. Do you think it needs to be institutionalized?
I do. That was quite interesting, in fact, when it came from Father Mkhatshwa, as he is the leader of the moral regeneration movement. I would have wanted to know. I assumed that they are the institution that doing that, but maybe there is a space. We need another institution. For me, I think the approach. This is a multi-pronged problem that requires a multifaceted approach. So you do need it to be handled at an institutional level, but you also need it to be done at the local level by people being motivated to build the nation, to build the moral fiber. Take that initiative. And so here you need to be thinking of your civil society groups, of your religious communities, coming on board, working hand in hand with government to try, and government must make available the resources and create the environment for this work to happen. And then your religious community and civil society must come on board and collaborate and work with government to solve this problem.
Let's talk, Dr. Maite, about the family unit. Because, for example, in the case last week, I was seeing reports where journalists had interviewed the grandmothers and the mothers and the sisters of the young boys. And they were saying that their children are good children, that they cannot believe that they would do something this horrible. That tells me that they don't know their children. What's going on in our family units?
Ntsiki, they might be right. They don't know what their children are doing. You see, children have got a dual persona. They've got an image that they use in the house because they know the do's and don'ts in the house.
Yeah.
But when they're outside, they behave in a different manner because you are not there. But most importantly, they would do that because we have ceased to care for each other. You know, you walk past somebody else's child, something is happening to that child, you just say it's none of my business. And people have stopped doing that to the extent that we also as parents contribute to it, because sometimes when your child is unemployed and one day she drives a BMW into a property with a big TV screen, you are happy. You don't say, not on my property. I don't want this. Where did you get it from? You are happy. So sometimes we collude and with them, but it will be interesting if the families were not asked by the media per se. They were asked by maybe people within the moral regeneration or in the Commission on Gender Equality to say exactly what is going on, because they are equally traumatized by what their children have done. So I think we don't know what's going on within people's families, but as I said, the unit has broken and TV plays a major part. You know, before TV, when people had their supper, there was discussion, they talked and whatever. And now people don't talk. They go to this altar called TV. That's where they adore everything. So you all eat in silence. Nobody knows what's going on through the other person's mind. And you all go to bed, and that's it. So there hasn't been any communion. There hasn't been any discussion as to family. People will say, oh, I need 5 rand for this and I need that. And
tuck shop money.
And you put it on the table and then that's it. So if families could also minimize the time when they come together as a family to say, this is not TV time. This is time for us. When we eat, we don't watch TV. And we sit at table for those that have. But let's try and find a corner where we sit as a family and eat.
And Dr. Khumalo, your thoughts on the family unit?
Yes, I agree that the breakdown of the family unit is a huge challenge. It would help if the families would be supported, nurtured and encouraged. And in fact, it would be interesting if we were to vote some political leaders, because they say that once they come into government, whether as an MP or a president, they're going to promote family values, as they normally do in other countries. We don't hear people coming forward being committed to nurturing and building the family unit, because that's the foundation of any society, of any nation. But the other challenge is that it's not also just the children of absent fathers who are involved in this situation. You've got very, very responsible fathers who are doing their best to raise their children, but children go out because of the environment, maybe peer pressure and other factors that contribute to that. So, as I said, it's a multi-pronged challenge that would require us to have a multifaceted approach together with families and our traditions, our cultures, that can be nurtured and brought back, retrieved from the past, that would encourage and build young men to be responsible men who are not violating their sisters. That would also help us to resolve this issue.
All right, we're going to take calls talking about the state of our society, the kind of children that we are raising, and also the type of society that we are building. It's staring us in the face today. Give us a call on 0891104207, and I'll read your SMSs as well. Send through to 34701.
Morning Talk with Siki Mgabadeli.
26 minutes to 10, continuing our conversation with Dr. Tebogo Maitse, who is acting chairperson of the Commission for Gender Equality, and Dr. Smangaliso Khumalo, Director for Research and Postgraduate Studies at the School of Religion, Philosophy and Classics, talking about the type of society that we live in today. Let's read some of your SMSs and we'll take some calls, and then I'll get a response from the two doctors. So Albi in PE says, if Zuma was a leader instead of such a bad example to the masses, our problems as a society would be less. Wandile Ngceba Etujwa says, we have created a violent society. Criminals do whatever they want to do. Use of drugs is very rampant. Rod says, isn't the behavior of the children a reflection of the parents' morality and the community environment? And Mark and Belhar says, if you understand the Bible and its warnings, then those evil acts would come as no surprise. Steve in Cape Town says, these boys come from broken marriages, career-minded only parents, no proper upbringing. Parents should take the blame. David Mtunzi in Mahikeng says these disgraceful behaviors are a reflection of us as a society and government failing in controlling our youth. Dave says it is written in the Bible, in the last days, children will be disobedient to their parents. And someone says there were two similar rape incidences. If you focus on one, you are as bad as them. No, we're not focusing on one. That's why we're saying the state of our society. Anthony says it's an outcome of mob rule syndrome in South Africa today. Madoda says the bad of this is the bad ones become influential on others. I blame democracy, which makes everyone to be the same. And OR in Vicksburg says, Siki, in as much as rape is totally wrong against a mentally disabled girl, why not highlight a gang rape of boys by women and stop it also? I think it was referred to this morning. And Vuyo Ebai says they see grown-ups doing it. It's up to the highest level of society. And someone says the problem lies within the communities that breed such crimes, but everyone, especially the government and relevant agencies, are turning a blind eye. Tulo says boys will keep on raping and killing women as long as there are laws preventing parents from punishing. So we're blaming Dr. Maid's government. We're blaming communities, parents. We're blaming democracy in some instances. We're blaming legislation.
I think that people who are blaming family go to what actually seem to reinforce what Father Mkhatshwa was saying about the disintegration of the family. I think that also needs to be debated, because right now what we have in most instances, we have mother, father, 2.5 children or 4 children, whereas some of us were brought up by grandparents. So and the extended family is no longer playing a major role as it used to before, therefore, maybe the parents today do not know how to parent because they were parented by their grandparents. So, or their parents were not there. You know, they were either working as migrant laborers and away from home, and everyone else has moved. And this kind of a nucleus family also has its own pros and cons, in the sense that people become focused, they look inward. So there's this sense of inward looking. They don't look outward. So I think that we cannot, in essence, continue to blame the family. We should look at ways in which we could inculcate a spirit of community, because that has gone completely. People no longer look out for each other. It's everyone for him or herself.
All right. Dr. Khumalo?
Yes, I agree with Dr. Maite there. I also think that we have actually lost this whole thing, even at the level of a nation as such. We've lost the values, we've lost the traditions that encouraged us to care for one another. In fact, when you look in what is happening in this country today, people who cares about the economic inequalities that are escalating? You know, we were leading in the world in terms of that. Others get extremely rich when others get extremely poor. That itself is a manifestation of the denigration of our morality, of our values. When people live in conspicuous consumerism that is escalating, and others at the same time live in absolute poverty, how do you then say you have a normal society in a situation like that? We are actually living in a situation of normality, if one may call it. So we need all the stakeholders of this nation, both your religious community, your government, your politicians themselves, everybody coming and saying there must be values on which we need to build this nation. And over and above that, the question of not having a national vision that all of us as a people subscribe to, a vision of who we want to be and who we want the world to see as us, as South Africans, being, and building that down, cascading that down to our families, to our children, to everybody, so that we can be proud to say, this is how a South African or even an African behaves or looks like. It's something like that would also help contribute, and to do that, you need everybody to come onto the table.
Let's hear from Jabu in Orlando East. Hi, Jabu.
Good morning to you, Singi. Thank you for taking my call, first-time caller.
Welcome.
Yeah, Singi, this is a problem. You know, what a week that wasn't, in fact. It can be best summed up by, you know, the caption, things fall apart and the center cannot hold. You know, teenage boys raping mentally challenged girls. Then you get women or teenage girls raping mentally challenged boys. It all happened in Soweto. Whoa. You know, it begs the question, South African black underclass, can it be saved? You know, it brings to mind, you know, the quotes from the greats. You know, your Charles Dickens. It was the best of times, the worst of times. It was an era of hope and an era of despair. You know, we're all going straight to heaven. We're all going back, you know, the other way. And also now, to quote the most famous one, you know, and I think for this time, which is, you know, fitting, you know, the Steve Bantu Biko, in one of his writings, he says, it becomes more necessary to see the truth as it is if you realize that the only vehicle for a change are these people who have lost their personality. The first step, therefore, is to make the black man come to himself, to pump back life into his empty shell, to infuse him with pride and dignity, to remind him of his complicity in the crime of allowing himself to be misused, and therefore letting evil reign supreme in the country of his own birth. This is what we mean by an inward-looking process.
All right. I've got Jabu, I'm sorry. Jabu. I'm sorry. I'm going to have to move on. I've got lots of people on the line, unfortunately. But quoting there from Achebe, Dickens, and Biko. Let's hear from Sam in Johannesburg. Morning.
Hello.
Hi, Sam.
Hello. Good day. I'd just like to comment. The thing is that we constantly blame the community. But what is our government doing about this thing? I mean, I have a child who is essentially sort of like the girl in what you call it, in Snake Park. But the thing is that how many schools are there in Johannesburg, in Gauteng, that cater for special needs, for the special needs of these children? If I were to say 0 in Soweto, I wouldn't be far from the truth. Or even in Soshanguve, where Father Mkashwa comes from. I mean, the other thing is that do the social services even have a register of these children? They don't keep a register. It would be possible to tag, electronically tag our children and be able to know where they are at any point in time. The other thing is that it's so difficult to get a social. The thing is that our children, until they are 18, are not allowed to they cannot access a disability grant until the age of 18. They cannot access a disability grant until the age of 18. And there is something wrong when, no matter what the circumstances of the parents, there is something wrong when a child who is mentally disabled cannot access a disability grant until the age of 18. And the thing is that, I mean, they talk about means tests and what have you. It's so what you call it. The other thing is the Department of Health. You cannot access the drugs that we need for these children, for our mentally, what you call it, especially if the child has got fits. You cannot access Tegretol at our nearest clinic. So the thing is that despite the fact that you would even register the child, you have to go to a place like Chris Hani, or you have to go to a psychiatric institution. And that is where you can dance and sing and protest. The Women's League can do that. But we long for people like the Maposhos of this world who would have put in something practical.
All right. You know what? I think we do need to bring in the ministry to deal with those issues and the access. But I think, Dr. Maitse, you were saying there's 2 special needs schools in Soweto.
Yeah, I think probably 2 or 3.
Right. Let's hear from Nomsa in Cape Town. Hi, Nomsa.
Hello, Sigi. Good morning, and good morning to the listeners and to your panel. I just want to say parents are not exemplary. That we must address. You have political leaders that have wives and partners. The children do not know whether they are firstborns or lastborns in those families. So it's something that they experience every day. And children are confused. One child said to me, Sisi, I do not know. I'm very confused. I don't know whether I'm a lastborn from my mother or a firstborn from the list of the children that the parents have. Someone also mentioned the issue of special schools. We have the monies that we have for the parties. They could be addressing special schools for children who have seizure and children who have mental disabilities. The National Party, when the National Party was in government, they actually addressed that. They had their children having special schools. You can go all over. The white children who are mentally disabled, they have seizure, they have everything. They have places, schools to go, but our children are roaming around the streets. So also the role of the church, the church, you can have the church that is doing the work that is done by the social development, but the spiritual feeding of the children, of knowing what is right and what is wrong, is lacking.
Okay.
So I just want to make comment on that. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, we'll hear what my guests have to say about that. Let's take one more call. Geraldine at Port Shepstone. Morning.
Yes, hello, Siki.
Hi, Geraldine.
I just think that the mothers must step up to the plate and take more responsibility. You know, they're the ones who have the kids when they're little, and that's where they get taught to respect women. It's just ridiculous to try and stop teenagers' behavior, because that's already, it's very difficult to stop them. but they learn when they're little. And every child has a mother. And if it's not a mother, in the case of the rural people, there's a grandmother. And these women not only must stand up and complain when the rapes have occurred, it's up to them as well to teach their children, the little ones, how to respect women. I'm sure that's a start.
Yeah.
At least it's a start.
Should we give up on the men?
No, but the thing is that, once they get older, they do take their fathers as role models, and they're not always ideal.
Yeah.
But I do think the mothers must take more responsibility for the young boys.
Okay. All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Geraldine. We also have Ngila Mwendane on the line. Ngila, good morning.
Good morning, Siki. Thanks for taking my call, and hello to your panel.
Yeah.
Hello.
Siki, I'm going to focus on the solution because we have copiously covered the problems. I've been involved in this very, very area, of mindset change, because I think it is a mindset that is like the culprit here.
Yeah.
I've covered many sectors, including parenting, students, teachers, entrepreneurs, nurses, youth, and what you call the police. In fact, I'm busy with the police right now, the police cadets. Because the problem here is the mindset. People have lost their consciousness. Higher consciousness breeds the desire to grow, to develop, and to leave a legacy. That desire generates the quest for self-knowledge. And self-knowledge leads to self-discovery and the need to pursue one's purpose or self-mastery. That is what our people need. And I have been delivering a program that actually instills this in people. In group formations, yes, but I was addressing the individual in that.
Okay.
And then the results that were obtained here, Siki, were just, beyond any, even my, what's called understanding. I couldn't believe it. For instance, I went to Groenpunt in 1997, it was, or later than that. And, the results that one obtained there are such that when I went to Groenpunt Correctional Center, there was an average of 2 incidents of gangster violence.
Yeah.
The first group I engaged was 20, and the second 71, and the third 200, and the fourth was 500 people. After that, the whole prison wanted to attend.
Okay.
Now, even others wanted to attend this. After 18 months of absence, I paid a courtesy visit to the center.
Yeah.
I could not believe what I was told about the impact of this program. They told me that in the preceding 18 months, there had only been 2 incidents of gang violence in prison.
All right. Mike,
an average of 2 per week.
Mike, we're going to run out of time, and I've got to give my guests a chance to respond. Just very quickly, what is this mindset that you are changing? Let's define the mindset.
Changing the mindset from self-evaluation to a mindset that is characterized by what we call a self-worth, a higher self-worth, and the quest for excellence and the quest to serve and leave a legacy. And even prisoners gain that once they stop this violence. Now, if you can give hope to people who have no foundation for hope, how much more can you achieve with people who have got a foundation of hope?
All right.
Like those people who are outside prison. And then I've got a report on this, and anybody who wants it, Siki, and I'm sure you'll help me with this one. And I'm not selling anything, I'm not advertising anything. I just want to share what can be achieved. People can send an email to mike@soultalk.co.za, and I'll send them this report for free, especially people in government, so we can work together on this one.
All right. Thanks, Mike. Thanks for your call. What do you make of that, Dr. Khumalo, and some of the comments from our callers?
It is interesting indeed, and what people are offering as solutions to this. But of course, there is more that needs to be done. My thinking is that there is a need where at the family level itself, people have to be kept accountable. We cannot excuse fathers for making babies around and then disappearing and appearing later in life to walk alongside those children. Anyone who brings a child on this world must be made accountable for the upbringing of that child in whatever possible way. That's the one way, the one solution. Secondly, for me, is Mike is right. I agree with him. That is the question of mindset. And of course, government, no matter how much money it can have, and no matter how much political will it can have, no matter how many institutions it can bring, it cannot work on people's minds and hearts. And that's where you need your other sectors, the communal sector, your religious sector, to work on people's minds and hearts and be supported to try and then put up these communities, these institutions that are going to look after your mental handicapped child, as they are saying, but also raising boys. And that's where you are going to find the so-called role models. Because even though we may say the parents are not role models, there are still a lot of good men out there who are role models. They may be found in your sports ground. They may be found in your cultural groups. They may even be found in churches. So these groups must be encouraged instead of being marginalized. And every time they raise a critical voice, they are brutally silenced by the powers that be. People must be allowed to express themselves, and whatever contribution they can make to the building of this nation must be welcomed.
Dr. Maite?
Siki, I think Dr. Khumalo touched on the fact that we do not have a vision as a nation. And this is quite a crucial issue, because I've always thought about it that basically 18 years into a democracy, we as South Africans were still in a state of anomie. We need to come down and say, how do we define ourselves? How do we portray ourselves? What is it to be a South African? To the extent that to show that we don't, when the national anthem is sung, people do all sorts of things. And in other countries, people observe that as a sense of pride. Then I'm not going to take the side of government. However, I think it's unfair to continuously blame government, because we cannot have a government official in all our homes. These things happen within our communities and within our homes. So this is unfair, and I think we need to start looking out for each other and helping each other to be there. But in terms of the disabled, let's also remember that we as Africans used to hide our children who were disabled, and we don't know what used to happen then. And now, I think what we need to do is to encourage them, parents, to send their children to school and get the social workers involved. Lastly, and this is lastly, I'd like to challenge all South African men who found what has happened totally disgusting, to go to court, protest, have placards outside the courtroom and say, these boys have not done it in the name of manhood.
Mike and Durban, morning.
Hi, good morning. The main focus is discipline, and we need to teach the children from the very young age discipline. And unfortunately, I'm not only talking townships, I'm not talking at in the upmarket areas. It has to start from the very young. And to get fathers who have just made babies and to do all of that, unfortunately, is not going to happen. We keep on talking and talking. No concrete answer. I'm going to tell you the concrete answer. I have a business, but I run an organization called GEMS. It's Greater Edendale Muslim Society. We run 11 creches in the area of Edendale in Pietermaritzburg. I promise you, it's between 3 and 6 years old we run these creches. Well, from mud huts, but we got solid structures that we run these creches from. The point is, we teach these children in these creches the discipline. We use this Montessori concept, and I promise you, we have a coordinator that go to every creche every single day, and then they monitor this. Unfortunately, we have to do the discipliningly part in the sense that there's a routine. We teach them love and care. And
Mike, I'm sorry. I'm going to ask Mike. Mike, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Mike. We've got literally 3 minutes. So I'm going to ask my last two callers to be as brief as possible. We've got SMSs to read, and then we're going to wrap up. Amrit in Cape Town. Morning.
Good morning, Vicky.
Morning. Please be brief.
Right. Now, I am concerned about our school learners, right? Now, South Africa can become a first world country, but our school learners, they must be successful at school so that they can achieve success in the future. Drugs and alcohol is destroying the brain cells, and this is very dangerous to our learners. Thank you, Siki.
Thanks, Amrit. And final call, Bukhosi and Kelvin. Morning.
Siki, I've just joined the fray very late. I don't know what the other speakers say, but I'm going to be very brief. The problem is that we have abandoned our culture and our tradition. We see a situation now where we boast of being single parents, and that is the problem. Children need to be brought up by both parents, particularly when they get to their age of puberty. They need both parents. Siki, I'm almost 70 years of age, and I was brought up by very, very strict parents. Same to my wife who grew up in a rural area. I was brought up in Orlando West, Pomolo, and we were given a hiding. Now you have a government that comes and legislates to you how to bring up your children in your home. It doesn't work, Siki. You've got to, I'm not saying assault, I am saying giving children a hiding and bring them up properly. Okay. When I was in my puberty, my parents pulled me up. My father sat me down and told me that what is a girl and what am I as a boy. My mother carried that forward and told me the consequences of sleeping with a girl before marriage and the consequences thereof. This is lacking in our society now. Very briefly, Siki, that's all what I have to say.
Thank you.
But we have lost it. Our culture has gone out the window. We don't value marriage anymore.
Thanks, Bukhosi. Final word, Dr. Khumalo?
Well, my final word would say, actually, it is possible, Siki. We need to find a solution, and we are, but we need to work together as South African citizens from all levels. Thank you.
All right, and final word.
I think I would like to challenge all the men to get out there. It's their turn now to fight against gender-based violence. Thank you.
Thank you very much to both of my guests this morning. And let's hope men will take up that challenge. Dr. Tebogo Maitse, who is acting chairperson of the Commission for Gender Equality, as well as Dr. Simangaliso Khumalo, who is director for research and postgraduate studies at the School of Religion, Philosophy and Classics. Some SMSs, JPE says, Siki, they do it because they can. All men, when they see a sexy girl, they want sex with her. But now with the thought, the deed, dysfunctional families are one cause. Someone says the preponderance of nudity, sex and violence on TV is a big factor in promoting the culture of sexual exploitation and violence among the young. Stop sex shows on television. Spiwa in KZN says we must just prepare our psyche. Things are to become worse in the next coming 5 years. South Africans are yearning painfully for leadership which has high morals. And Vuyo Ebai says kids see grown-ups up to the highest level doing bad things and getting away with it and laughing. So we're going to read more and more SMSs.
Morning Talk with Siki Mgabadeli.
And it's 6 minutes past 10. You're listening to SAFM 104 to 107. Just reading some of your SMSs sent through on our previous conversation about the state of our society. And Gustav says, your guest is correct and the present government is not concerned with deprogramming people of the idea of making a government ungovernable. Mlu in Durban says, ETV and explicit material violence on PlayStations and parents not taking kids to churches all breeds these issues. And someone says, Siki, our political leaders, parents of today and church leaders have become liars, thieves, rapists, killers and are corrupt. Who do the youth look up to? Mabida in KZN says, let us out of the solitary confinement or build more prisons. And someone says, if those found guilty of rape could be castrated, rape will discontinue. And someone says, Dr. Khumalo says the country needs everyone to assist government in trying to resolve this. But my question is, how so? Because our government has told business to stick to its affairs. And someone says it would be interesting to know how many families know and teach their children the 10 commandments in the Bible. And someone says, I need Ngila's contact details. I do the same here in KZN. Well, his email address is mike@soultalk.co.za, mike@soultalk.co.za. And someone in Durb says, generally boys look up to father figures. If not available, use any. Government must reinstate prayers, handwork, domestic science and cleaning at schools. And someone says, the Bible says a child left to itself will bring shame to its mother. And another one says, education on morality at home, at creche, at school, at church, at work, on radio, on TV, at political meetings, in taxis. This will stop the violation of people. And another one says also that a child taught correctly will never depart from it. The career-driven, selfish mothers are the prime problem. And Ria says you only have to see the chaos on the streets when people protest, and at times children are involved. I'm sure it's a conversation we're going to continue to have as we try to build the kind of society that we all want to live in, want to live in, want to live in, want to live in.